This book made me feel existential about aging. Yes, I'm really about to review a book from 2014 because why not? This one actually comes to me as a recommendation from my friend, so shout out Shannon. If you want to hear multiple perspectives about aging and the evolution of what it means to live a good life as someone gets older, then this is a worthwhile read. I think in today's culture and media, there isn't a lot of stuff that exposes us to the ideas of aging on a personal and more subjective level. And it can be a blind spot for some of us who maybe never really spent a lot of time around older family members. As a result, we don't know what to expect when it comes to aging. We don't know what it means to actually get older. It kind of just sneaks up on us. We don't see the nuances and complexities of these situations until we're living through them. It's far more prevalent to see dying as a one and done, a quick shot, like an action potential in a neuron. It's not like that at all. And so this book offers good perspective. And while I had a lot of personal experience with seeing the struggles that elderly people with different medical conditions would have, I still didn't grasp sort of subjective reality of it. And so this book really offered that for me in a way that I hadn't really been able to get at. With that being said, let's get into it. Death is a universal experience, but it seems that we have gotten to be not so good at dying in a few respects. And this is not entirely good or bad. It's just a statement of the way things are right now. Like for instance, we can look at the patient care model. So we've had so many advancements in treatments and medications. All these things have been helping train doctors to keep the human machine running far past what was even thought possible even decades ago. And we have improved our average lifespan by reducing, one of the areas is by reducing childhood mortality, because we wash our hands and we use sterile environments. So that's a big difference. These simple changes in practice at a protocol level made it so that people are living longer. But the quandary or the central question or dilemma that arises is, what's the point of living longer if your quality of life is terrible? Despite death being a human universal, we're generally ill-equipped to handle how we're going to spend our twilight years, and even more so when it comes to dealing with our loved ones nearing the end of the line. And so in this book, Dr. Gawande mentions this default inertia to keep fixing and tending to the human body and making it run for longer and longer and longer and stretching out its lifespan essentially. And it was just a remarkable imagery in that analogy that I found was striking. Our healthcare systems and our providers and physicians basically have this tendency as part of the inertia to keep providing options, to keep providing more things and inundate our patients with more information that could maybe buy them a few years if they're lucky. In many cases, this thoroughness is good, but at times it can reach a point of overwhelm. And all this information tends to fail the person when it comes to accounting for their fears, whatever concerns they may have, and what the non-negotiables are in their life. Because the way that these treatments go is that there are side effects, and those are trade-offs that a person has to decide if they're willing to make. And so by sidestepping it with providing patients with lots of information and options for treatments, we sort of miss the central question again, which is, what are the things that are valuable to you today? What does a good day look like for you in these days? Like, what are the things that you want to prioritize in your life as it comes to a close? And how do you make sure that patients are sort of confronted in a gentle way, of course, with these realities of their situation? And so there is a lot to be desired from some physicians who may not question their patients and really consider what their values are and how that impacts their decision making. It's a thing that's hard to talk about, and it's a tricky thing because there'll be these novel therapeutics, these experimental drugs, and the default belief that a family may have is that it will give them more time. It will give them decades, like 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. But in reality, it's far shorter than that in most cases. And it can also deteriorate the quality of life for the person who is living longer. It's a really delicate balance. I found it interesting how he described the dynamic that a physician has with the patient, because you're supposed to be a nurturing presence, but professional, and you have to be there for them in a way like a fellow human being is, and you can't lose sight of that human connection. But in doing so, with all this information and trying to be there and be nice, it's sort of coddling the patient in a way that doesn't question them on what's really at the heart of what's important to them. And those are questions that are worth asking, and the answers are super revealing. I thought that was a really good nuanced perspective on physicians having these tough conversations with their people that are under their care. And these tough conversations aren't things that you can necessarily glean from a statistical analysis. It's from really just sitting down with the person face to face and really getting to the heart of it and giving them your full attention. That way you understand what it is that they're truly looking for. Ultimately, it's not just about surviving, but thriving. Hospitals may not be the best place for someone with age-related declines in their functions or abilities, and so the care model has to shift to accommodate that. Dr. Gawande talks about these different living situations and means of caring for the elderly, and it was inspiring to read these case studies of how people used animals and brought children over, or included a lot of systems in place so that each individual that was in the living facility would be able to have that sense of dignity and agency that had been commonly taken away from them if they had been in a typical nursing home. I think that looking at these examples provides a lot of value in terms of what the future could look like for people with age-related declines. And perhaps the care model will shift even further so that people that are in their existing homes are able to get all the facilities and all the care that is needed. Overall, Being Immortal gave me valuable insight into end-of-life care and the struggles that people who are getting older face. And I think that Dr. Gawande's personal anecdotes at the beginning with respect to his own father and grandfather, and those sort of tie in very nicely with his discussion of how care has evolved, and not necessarily just in Eastern society, but also Western society. And on a personal level, one of my fascinations has been with hospital architecture, basically how care can be shaped by the spaces that we inhabit. And that's a whole domain that I didn't really know of until a few years ago, and it's simply brilliant. So reading this and reading the specific instances of people experimenting with what types of models would work so that it can create a greater living environment for people that are aging, I thought that was really cool. Many of the accounts that were shared had talked about the importance of home to them, and that by moving out of a place that they may have called home for decades is just now a foreign place to them, because they have to move to a different living facility that could accommodate whatever their needs may be due to aging. And so I thought that was really interesting to see the importance of a physical space in terms of a person's mental toughness and willingness to, take each day in stride, and how that affects the networks of people that they're with. Because once you move someone out of a certain place, it's not like the whole network is moving with them. It creates a separate layer of isolation that could be tough to work through, unless the new place also has those facilities that encourage those types of connections to take place. And moving your entire life and uprooting it to move into a living facility even though it may look amazing on paper, have all these facilities, have the best round-the-clock care, it can be demoralizing because it's just another sterilized environment that doesn't have the personality and the connections that you had before, and that can be tough to deal with. I think in the future it would be interesting to see a greater decoupling of healthcare so that it's not necessarily tied to a separate location than the home. So by that I mean you can get quality care at your own house. You don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to cluster people who are unwell or sick or dealing with issues in just one spot. And that's really where a concentration of illnesses and everything has occurred, where people are placed in close proximity to one another when they're unwell. But maybe the care model will eventually shift to a point where any person can get care that's quality and personalized for them from the comfort of their own home. I'm probably not going to reread this book anytime soon. It doesn't offer anything new on rereads. It's really just illuminating an area of the human experience that you may not have personally dealt with, and just provides more perspectives. So anything that could be cited or referenced, I could just find it in the back of the book or in the index. Overall, Being Mortal is a great book. It's a quick read. You could even audiobook it. I personally don't really listen to a lot of audiobooks, but I imagine this is one of those that you can do that for. It's not super dense or anything. It's very easy to follow in a narrative sense, as Dr. Gawande relates things through his personal anecdote and through these case studies. It's not like nitty-gritty details that you need to be concerned about, but the overall picture is very valuable. If you've already read the book, leave a comment and let me know what you thought. Hopefully we can get some interesting insights and discussion going in the comments. I'll be reading and replying to them. And before I close out, I'm going to share with you a few key questions that were raised in the book that would be extremely valuable in terms of providing insight into what you would want as you got older, or what your priorities would be as you got older. And this can also be a good set of questions to keep in your back pocket to ask your loved ones, even when it comes to making these sorts of decisions as to what their care should look like. And so having that conversation can be a lot easier. What is your understanding of where you are and of your illness? What are your fears or worries for the future? What are your goals and priorities? What outcomes are unacceptable to you? What are you willing to sacrifice and what are you not willing to? And what would a good day look like? Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this review, and I'll probably record a few more periodically. I'm not going to do this for every book I read, but yeah, if you're interested in seeing what kinds of books I've read recently, I have a list on my website, and sometimes I even write about things I read in more depth with my newsletter. So I'll put a link to that in the description. It's once a month. It's pretty simple. Nothing too crazy going on there. No spam, nothing like that. And if you're watching this also, you probably would enjoy the rest of my videos because you're sitting here. So, right, and that about covers everything. I hope you enjoyed this review. It's a good book. It's a good quick read. And if you're someone who's interested in healthcare, or if you're a pre-med, this is something you'd probably want to read for some perspective. So yeah, go check it out and be sure to like and subscribe. And thank you for watching.